So I lived in Toronto for 4 years, and after like 2.5, 3 years of living there, I couldn't help but feel like a cog in an S&P, a big S&P 500 machine. And I think Toronto is a perfect example of that. And I'll talk about Toronto specifically in this video, but this pretty much applies to like any big Western city that people live in, So why did I feel this way? Well, the key thing is, when you live in a city like Toronto, a lot of people have pretty high incomes. So, people will make like 8, 9, 10K Canadian dollars per month, maybe more. And the key thing is even if you're making all this money, which is objectively quite a good amount of money, the costs are super high. Just your bare cost of living is so high. So, either you're gonna rent a condo like close to work, in which case you're gonna pay super high rent, or maybe you live somewhere further away, like in the suburbs or something, and then, guess what? Now you need a car to not only go to work, but do your groceries and, any sort of travel you need to do. Okay, you're getting a car. Well, all right, great. He's getting a car. Let's get him one on finance and get him hooked to 12.99% interest rate loan for that car over 48 months or whatever that is, right? And so that's the car, right? And then okay, you need to pay to park it. Anytime you go anywhere, you park it, and you pay for insurance too. And then you've got all these costs. So my point is, people in these cities, including me, you make a lot of money, but a ton of that just goes straight back into the local economy. You're consuming local things, local car loans. You're making the banks richer and the car dealerships richer, and all of that. And then when you pay for parking, the land value goes up, and with the condo rentals too, real estate's going up. And so basically you're just a little cog in this big machine that, sure, you're being productive and you're making a large amount of income, but on the other side of that, you're also, your other key role in this big machine is to be a consumer, right? So you're a productive worker and you're also a consumer. So it's like this cycle where you're making a bunch of money, but you're spending it all back on consumption immediately, locally. And that's why I call it an S&P 500 machine, because that, functionally that makes, that creates growth for stock market indices, right? As soon as you go and sign up for that mortgage on your condo, your super expensive condo, the bank stocks, the bank just made a tiny, small, marginally larger amount of net income, and that'll make its share price go up. And so you're being both a worker bee and a consumer for this whole ecosystem. And that makes the indices go up. And then so when I was in Toronto, I was renting this condo for 2,200 Canadian dollars per month. I'll talk in Canadian dollars. It's 1.37 exchange rate for USD. So it was $2,200 per month to rent this condo. And the bed that I had, it was a furnished condo, and the bed that it came with was too short. So it was not a full queen size bed. It was a twin bed, or double twin. And I'm 5'9", so I'm not even that tall. And I kind of like to sleep with my arms like this, under my pillow, and just slightly above my head like this. And I couldn't really fully fit vertically in the bed, so I had to sleep diagonally. So basically, a typical day in my life in Toronto was okay, I wake up and then I go to work. Now, when you go to work, as soon as you step out, it's minus 15, minus 20 outside. And now to go to work, you have a couple different options, right? Either you drive, and then that costs you like $1,000 a month, all included, right? When you include gas and insurance and your car payment and all of that. So again, you know, more local consumption, and you're trapped, right? So you're trapped because you can't save, but it's kind of another point. But yeah, so you can either drive or you can take public transit. So let's say you take public transit, that'll cost you like $3 for just like a public transit ride, and then you're dealing with, you know, all these like safety issues. You've got a bunch of crackheads, or like even people playing music on their cell phones, like on speaker modes, on public transit. And that is, you know, if you're not getting assaulted with people pushing you onto the tracks, or, you know, like it happened in Chicago, like set on fire. So I mean, what the hell is that, right? So okay, you could take public transit. All right. The way I chose is like I would bike. I think it was kind of nice. I would get a little exercise in the morning, and it's cheap, you know, and it's fast. So I would bike, but there's no bike paths, right? In Toronto, there's barely any bike paths. So, you know, I can't even remember how many different times this happened, but it's super unsafe. Like many times I almost got hit by, you know, people drive like big pickup trucks and stuff in North America. So I'm like almost getting hit by cars, and it's unsafe. And, you know, I remember one time, like I was kind of going down the road like this pretty quickly, and there's a guy in a truck in a F-150 that was parked, and he opened his door, and I almost crashed into his door, and he was like, "Oh, sorry, buddy." And I was like, you know, I didn't say much, but, you know, I was thinking like, what do you mean sorry? It's like you almost killed me there. I mean, seriously, that could have been dangerous, right? So, all right, okay, now I made it to work. I get to work, and the other thing you notice is like a lot of your coworkers. So I've always been like freelance, and you know, running my own business and stuff like that. So I'm just working in a co-working space. So the people working there are not working for the same company as me. They're all just doing their own thing, working for different companies. And a lot of the people there are sad. Like they're just sad people. Like I remember this one lady that was sitting, you know, in the same workspace as me. And, you know, in my case, I kind of like to chit chat with people. I mean, you know, breaks the loneliness of working all day, and being friendly, or at least like you're sharing a workspace, at least just saying hi and bye and stuff. And then, so in the morning I would usually show up and, you know, just kind of make eye contact with people, and just smile and nod or something, or just say hi, you know. And this lady would never acknowledge anyone. Like whenever she would walk in or out of this workspace, she was just perfectly laconic, you know, just perfectly just doing her own thing, you know, zero social contact with anyone. And when she would leave at night, like, to me this is so weird. I mean, we shared a workspace all day. We're sitting literally one desk across from each other. How have you never, like, I don't know, asked for my name or said hi or introduced yourself? I mean, we're working for like months at a time alongside each other. And she would leave at night, and she would just like put her AirPods in, and, you know, walk straight out of the workspace. And it's like, oh, okay, so, you know, you're spending all day working around people, and most of them have zero interest in, you know, talking to you or whatever. And this is, you know, I'm not really like blaming them that much. This is partly a result of, again, this like S&P 500 machine, right? It's like, well, because of this system where, you know, people are working like dogs to just survive, and all their costs are super high all the time, they don't really have much headspace for much else, right? And so this kind of translates, like, you know, in North America, they have this like Protestant culture where it's kind of like this austere, like very serious, hardworking culture. And I mean, it works well. You know, there's economically, it's, you know, some of the Canada and the US are some of the most high GDP per capita countries in the world, although Canada is not doing as well these days. But yeah, this Protestant culture it's successful business-wise, but it's not really fun, you know. I mean, people, like in France, for example, there's tons of patios, and people enjoy, you know, going out and going to patios and just, I don't know, having beers and smoking cigarettes or whatever it is. But in Toronto, like when I lived there, every once in a while I would go out with people and have a beer or whatever, and you know, I would try to chat with them and like have interesting conversations and stuff, and many times I don't know, they were just kind of like, you know, looking at me like, oh, okay, you know. I felt like it was always kind of too much information or whatever. I didn't fit, you know. And so that translates, what I'm saying is that translates socially. You know, people they're like, in the back of their mind, they're always concerned about how high the cost of living is, and how high their rent is and all of that. And so they have to be like super focused on work. And if they're talking to you, they will talk about work and yeah. And so I'm spending all day at work, and then, all right, once I'm done, like, you know, working like a dog all day, I'm gonna head home and get on my little city bike and bike back home. And then, you know, you get home and like you check Hinge, right? And one of three things is gonna happen, right? Either you have no likes at all, or you're gonna have a couple likes from like really fat girls. That's possible too. Or maybe you'll match with a pretty chick, and she'll just tell you like how much she hates men, and how like basically you just feel like you amount to nothing, right? I mean, frankly, it seems like that's kind of how a lot of women feel in the West, you know, that like they just hate men, and you know, they're great and men are terrible. And you know, I was straight up told by this girl I remember a Tinder conversation I had with a girl who straight up told me like, I hate men, and it's like, okay, you know, it's super combative interactions between people. And so, you know, you're looking at your phone and this is kind of what you see, and then, you know, you decide to go to sleep, and at the end of the night I'm going to bed and I'm sleeping like diagonally on my mattress, you know, on my $2,200 a month furnished condo, sleeping diagonally on my mattress because my landlord's cheap, you know. And it's like, I think it's worth questioning whether like really this is the life, you know. And then yeah, on the weekend, like what do you do on the weekend, right? Surely there must be more to life than just this. On the weekend there's like not that much to do, right? I mean, maybe I would go and play like a game of volleyball with some people, but that's kind of it, you know. I'd mostly spend my time like playing video games, you know. And you can also go out to a bar. Like every once in a while my friend and I would like muster up some courage and be like, hey, come on, like, you know, let's not just stay cooped up inside all the time, and let's go to a bar and let's try to talk to some girls and stuff. And you go talk to girls and same, like you just kind of get the same like condescending energy where they just like, it's, you know, they really make it a point to show you like how worthless you are and how like really they're the shits, you know. Either that or they're just not interested, you know, which is perfectly fine, but you often get this kind of like really condescending energy in Toronto when you go out at night. And so this is depressing, you know. It's like basically you live 1 year of that, 2 years, 3 years, and after a while you start to realize like, okay, this is just how life is here. Like this is just what it is, right? So then you start to wonder like, well, what's the point? Like, what does this amount to, you know? Is it just to, you know, apart from making stock market indices go up through my, you know, slave productivity, what am I exactly achieving here? What am I doing? You know, maybe you're saving like a few $1,000s a month and investing them into index funds, and you're hoping that one day you're going to retire, and you're like, yeah, life has no intensity like that. There's no intensity, there's no fun. And I mean, you know, then you go out to like Spadina, Queen and Spadina McDonald's or Yonge Street McDonald's, and there's like infinite like you know, crackheads outside and homeless people like doing drugs, like doing hard drugs everywhere. And that's the other thing is, you know, obviously these people are in a terrible situation, but I also feel like, you know, drugs are kind of a way that the West chooses to like throw people a bone, to like keep the wage slaves going, you know, keep the productivity and consumer slaves going. So like, you know, they made, you know, weed legal, and how many people are on SSRIs or are like smoking a bunch of weeds, you know, just to kind of, I don't know, like survive, make it through, get some intensity and stuff. And it's like, yeah, let's just give them like a little drugs, you know, a little SSRI, a little weeds, and they'll just like make it through another day. You know, they need to keep being productive and consuming everything. You know, we need the stock market indices to go up, and that's really how I view it. That's how it is, in my opinion, and it's sad. And yeah, you know, the people out in the street are addicted to even much worse stuff like fentanyl and things like that, but that's kind of part of the same problem too. You know, it's like society that's kind of flooded with drugs. It's no good. And so I think this life should be escaped. I really think it should be escaped. I think it's not a way to live. And I think a key thing that seems to be kind of missed by a lot of people is that you don't really need to make that much money to escape this cycle, escape this life. So what are the steps to doing that, right? I would say, first of all, like, don't buy a house. Because if you're doing that, you're trapping yourself. This is like the ultimate. Well, there's also like marriage, right? That's like another really good way to trap yourself. But if you buy a house, you know, you get married, you have kids, now you're fully trapped. But let's say you just buy a condo, you know, you've saved enough for a down payment or whatever, and you decide to buy a condo. Well, now you've basically expended like all your savings. I mean, expended with an E, right? Like spent up like all your savings for this down payment. And then now you're stuck making this like monthly mortgage payments, right? So you can't quit your job. You have no optionality, no leverage. Like, you have to continuously doing that, because otherwise you can't make your mortgage payment. And if that's the case, then you lose your house, your most prized possession. And so I would say, first of all, don't buy a house, just rent. And in the meantime, like while you're renting, I think just build like online income. Now, I know it sounds kind of, you know, when you hear on YouTube like, oh, build online income, it's like, you know, where people are gonna try to, I don't know, sell you some kind of like program or whatever. But the truth is, I think a lot of people who are in this situation are like professional people. So it's quite likely that you can turn whatever you do into like a consulting model or like a freelance type of model, right? And so, you know, let's say that, you know, you find yourself a first freelance client doing anything. You know, there's like so many freelance things that you can do. In my case, I'm a software engineer, so that's like one of the most freelanceable things you can do. But assuming you have like some sort of skills, which not everyone does, but assuming you have some sort of skills to sell, you can probably build up like some freelance income within a few months. You know, if you try hard enough and you just do a little bit every day of, you know, I don't know, putting yourself out there on like Upwork and Fiverr or all these platforms, and over time you build up, you know, you find clients, you build up some online income. And the key thing here is you really don't need to match your salary, right? Because once you're getting out of this S&P 500 machine thing, you don't need to make like 8 grand, 9 grand, 10 grand per month. You don't need to make that much, because you can just leave and have a much cheaper cost of living. So let's say you're able to make like, you know, okay, 1,500 Canadian dollars per month, 2,000. Let's say you can make 2,000 Canadian dollars a month. You can live fine. You can live fine in many parts of the world. I'll make another video where I break down my whole cost of living here, for example, in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. But to give you like the superficial numbers, I pay 750 CAD for rent, and that's just for 1 month, right, at an Airbnb. So if you take a longer term thing, it's going to be much cheaper. So 750 for rent. I pay $200 per month for international health insurance. So that's the other reason people are like really scared to do this, right? It's like, no, I need health insurance. Yeah, of course you need health insurance, but you realize like you don't need to have that provided through your employer. You can also just get it privately, And assuming you're in decent health, it's not going to cost you that much. So I pay $200 per month for life insurance, $750 for rent, so that's $950 all in. And keep in mind, like, I don't pay electricity either. That's included in my rent. And you know what else is included in my rent is like twice a week cleanings. Whereas, you know, do you think I had cleanings included in my $2,200 condo in Toronto? Of course not. You know, there was no cleanings. Here, you know, twice a week, like they'll come and I just message them on WhatsApp and they'll come and switch out my sheets, so I get to sleep in clean sheets and change the towels and just clean the floors and do all the dishes and stuff. And it's amazing, you know. And it's $750 per month. Okay, $200 per month of health insurance. And then for food, you know, what do you spend on food here? I mean, personally, I never ever cook. I just get grabs like twice per day all the time. And that costs me maybe like $5 or $6 Canadian dollars per meal, delivery included. So, you know, 6 times 2, that's 12. 12 times 30. You can do the math, you know, that's like 360, I think. So yeah, let's say, you know, 400 plus 950, it's like 1350, I think, right? So yeah, so 1350 per month, 1,350 bucks per month is what, let's say, is what baseline cost of living would be in Ho Chi Minh City. And keep in mind, this is, you know, it's like a big capital city, not you know, I'm not in Da Nang or like some cheaper town. You can do this you can do this cheaper, I think, in other places, but I chose to just come to Ho Chi Minh City. But, you know, I'm not saying it's like overnight that you can make $1,500 per month online with online income, but I mean, think about it. If you're making like 8-9K per month at your job, that means you have some skills that are marketable, that are sellable to some, you know, online marketplace. And another option is like maybe your employer would let you work remotely, and if that's not possible, then you can just build online income and do like a freelance thing. And there's lots of people being freelancers, and it works well. And yeah, so that's kind of how I would approach this. And you know, you can do this. I think you can start building up your online income without leaving your job at first, right? So if you just, like I said, if you just work on it a little bit every day while still working your job, and you know, you slowly find yourself some clients, get some kind of gig going where you're making that much. It doesn't need to be, you know, this big YouTube channel that's generating all this affiliate revenue or any like fancy online business. Just do some freelance stuff. And once you're making 1,500 Canadian, which in US is like, I don't know, 1,200 US or something, push it to 2,000 Canadian dollars, let's say 1,500 US, you can really leave, you know. And then, I mean, compare the daily routine of living in Toronto versus like living here, let's say. I think it's much better, you know. So I mean, here there's like 12 hours of jet lag with Canada, so I wake up and I have all this time, because when I wake up it's like 2 p.m. here and it's 2 a.m. in Toronto, so I have all this time to go to the gym and you know, just enjoy life and, I don't know, eat food and do whatever, maybe hang out with people, whatever it is. And then afterwards, you know, kind of at night at like 8 p.m. or, you know, 9 p.m. or something like that, I go to a cafe and I work until there's lots of like 24/7 cafes here. That's the other thing, is like when you don't have super high expensive rent everywhere, you know, the businesses can operate in a different way with different incentives, right? So I don't know if you've tried finding like a late night Starbucks or something to work at in Toronto, but they don't really exist. They close at 10 p.m. and they're super crowded, and you're fighting with people for outlets and stuff. Here, it's full of cafes and, you know, kind of like restaurants and stuff that have outlets everywhere for people to plug in their laptops, and they're 24/7. So this is perfect, and it's cheap. You know, I just had a whole bunch of, you know, I like filled myself up with Japanese food like half an hour ago at this place called Metsuya, and it's in D1, in Ho Chi Minh City D1. It's just over there, and it cost me 12.5 Canadian dollars. So it's really competitive, you know. And then you keep working at night and you do your thing, and then, you know, I will tell you too that culture is quite different, and girls are very different. It's not, they haven't really told me that they hate men that much, and yet I've interacted with quite a few of them in my 2 months living here. So it's just a difference in culture and cost of living. So, you know, if you're anything like me and you're starting to feel like life is kind of meaningless in the West, and you're just stuck in this loop, and you're feeling like no intensity, right? It's like there's no choice about getting older, right? Like we're all getting older all the time, and you have no control over that. But in the meantime, I think it should be optimized for having some fun and some life intensity. You can't always just live in the after, right? That's kind of what I was doing for the first, like, you know, many years of my life or whatever, is to just try to live in the after, you know, tell yourself like, okay, just build up your business, like save some money. It's going to be better after. It's going to be better after. Even if, you know, for the last 6 months, like, you know, you haven't gone on any dates with a girl, like you haven't touched any girls, it's fine. Like it'll be better after. Don't worry about it. Even if, you know, you feel like all these people around you are like kind of stupid and they don't understand at all. Like they're just like not at all vulnerable, and you have conversations with them and they're not interesting. Like don't worry. Like maybe you can find better after. And at some point, I think you got to stop living in the after and trying to figure out like, okay, how do I bring some intensity and, let's say, betterness, like improvements to my life right now. And I think the way I described is super viable. And once you're here, the other thing that happens is, because you have a much lower cost of living, it frees up all this time to try and focus on higher leverage stuff, right? So in Toronto, a lot of what was happening with me and my business is, if I had a contract, I run a software development agency, and if I had a contract come through, like a lead or something, I didn't have a lot of negotiation power, right, over that, because, you know, I need the money, right? I mean, it wasn't that bad. I was never in a dire situation, but I kind of needed the money to keep things running, you know, to pay my rent and all of that, all these high costs. You just need to work. You need the contracts. You need whatever gigs you can have, and so that's consuming all your time. So you can't really take some time and focus on, like, I don't know, making a YouTube video like I'm doing now, or working on like a side business or something. So once you actually kind of escape this trap, this S&P 500 machine, you get to try and think like, okay, how do I, you know, now that I'm making, you know, $1,500, $2,000 of income per month, like how do I expend that, right? Do I increase my freelance rates? Do I find better clients? Do I, you know, start another business? There's so many ways, but that's another thing that will happen from having a lower cost of living, is you get to focus on other opportunities, right? So yeah, I would encourage everyone to consider that. And if you're not going to do that, then the question I think you need to answer is like, are you happy? Is this life, is this a good life? Is this a good finality for you? Because in my case, it wasn't true. I was living in the after, in this image of like what I had after. If you're happy now, then that's good. But I would wager it's not true for a lot of people living this life. So yeah, if you disagree, then let me know in the comments. I'll be interested to hear it. And thanks for watching.